Welcome to the Sonya Dungee podcast, where conversation is always the essence of the soul. I am your host, Sonya Dungee. And yes, indeed, I am still bringing the heat to the IG, the Facebook, the YouTube, and now TikTok streets for whatever the reason being here. We lost one of our platforms, but it's all good. We're just going to go ahead and continue. So, tonight is one of the most personal podcasts that I have done in a while. And we're going to get into that in a few minutes. But if you will, please let me know the geographical area in which you are tuning in from this evening as we try to find out what's going on here with one of our platforms. But anyway, so again, I want to thank you for joining tonight. Tonight's episode number 239 is being brought to you by Always Destined for Greatness, B-Lips, and Drip City Customs, LLC. So with that being said, if you receive value tonight, I'd appreciate if you put in the comments value. If you have an aha or breakthrough moment, I would also appreciate to let us know that in the comments as well. And if you believe that someone would benefit from hearing tonight's episode, The Grief Nobody Prepared For, please go ahead and invite them or invite them to the replay later on. I would appreciate that as well. And in YouTube world, if you would like, comment, and share, that will allow us to get out there to a broader audience to reach those people that are looking for the message that is being delivered tonight. So again, I want to welcome you back to the Sonya Dungee podcast. And I am your host, Sonya Dungee, parental grief life coach, speaker, and woman who understands firsthand what it feels like to lose a parent you deeply have loved and cherished, and then still be expected to function life that has drastically changed. Okay. So as I said, tonight's episode is deeply personal to me because losing a parent changes everything, not just emotionally, but mentally, physically, socially, and even spiritually as well. And for many women, the hardest part is actually figuring out how to move forward without feeling like they're leaving their parents behind. I spent 342 days in that grief after my dad's passing before I finally made the conscious decision to invest in my healing and move forward differently. So today, we're not just talking about grief. We're talking about how to begin moving forward through it. So let's get into it. So tonight, I'm going to be giving you 5 steps to assist you in your healing journey, as well as some really thought-provoking questions as well. So the first one is acknowledge that your life has changed. One of the biggest mistakes grieving women make is pretending they're okay because they think they have to be strong. And I did that myself. When somebody asked me, "How you doing?" I would say, "I'm okay." And as I've stated so many times before and again today, is when somebody says they're okay, that is a warning, a very strong indicator that they're not okay. Okay? But that grief ignored that we're talking about tonight, it becomes grief prolonged. You see, your life changed the moment your parent went to be with the Lord or left this earth, if you will. And healing starts when you stop minimalizing that reality. You don't have to rush your emotions. You don't have to perform strength. And you don't have to carry it silently. Okay, and that's the first step towards honesty. So I'm going to stop at this point. I'm going to briefly share my story with you of how I uh, ended up sitting in front of you this evening as a parental grief life coach. All right. And for those of you who are joining for the first time, I want to thank you in advance. I want to thank you for those that are sharing the message as well, because it's important. I'm going to also be doing my best to pop up in the comments as much as I can, considering some brief technicality here. So don't acknowledge you now. I will acknowledge you later on after the podcast has concluded. Don't want to take up too much of your time, but so my story, how I became a parental grief life coach. My journey started in the middle of the pandemic on January 23rd of 2021 at the VA hospital in Northport, New York. You see, less than 48 hours before, I found myself sitting at that same hospital in this small room as a medical personnel, if you will, delivered devastating news to my father and me. You see, she sat with us and she said bluntly, my dad had 6 months to live. And in my mind, I didn't want to show the emotions that I was truly feeling because I didn't want it to affect my father. I didn't want to get him any more upset than he probably was. And I didn't want him to have to worry about me either. So I held it in and chose to let my mind go. So in my mind, I began preparing to bring my dad back to my home. I was going to do whatever necessary to give him the most comfortable 6 months as I could under the circumstances. But you see, God had a different plan. And in that 48 hours later, less than, I found myself sitting beside my dad. And as I held his hand, staring into his eyes, into his face, I noticed a tear come rolling down his cheek. And it was in that moment that he took his first breath, his last breath, excuse me, here on this earth. And I know he took his first breath in heaven. And as a result, I almost instantaneously spiraled out of control. Okay. And 3 years. I lost a lot of weight. I lost my identity and all of that. I lost that closeness that I had with my family and my friends. And I was just simply doing the bare minimum to survive. My days just became a cycle of survival. And in that, I developed a routine. I worked from home because of the pandemic. I just simply came out of my bedroom and went into my shushu room, and I did whatever my tour was for the day, jobbing, closed down at the end of my tour, walk right back across the living room into my bedroom, and I remained there to the next day. And I did that day after day after day after day. Okay. And the only time I left the house was to run to Calverton National Cemetery, where my dad's remains were entombed behind the Calabarium wall, for a sense of closeness to my dad. And it wasn't until enough became enough. And I realized that I just could not continue down that path of destruction that I was going. And I wasn't living, I was just existing. And deep down, I knew something. Deep down, I knew I had a life purpose. You see, I previously defeated death, and I just knew that God had a purpose for me. I was purposeful. So I decided to seek help, because you see, for those 342 days, I was doing my best, but my willpower alone was not cutting it for me. So I had to invest in myself. I had to seek that help. I enlisted a coach, a mentor, and with that came a loving community that came alongside of me and supported me through the toughest of times, even when they didn't know it. And they stayed there through my transformation. And to this day, they're still there alongside of me. I began taking those high-level courses called Iconic Attraction Mastermind classes. I stayed intentional. I stayed focused. I made sure not to miss a class. I put in the work no matter how uncomfortable it was, how I was feeling. And I started rebuilding my life again. And so therefore, as a result, that is the reason why I sit in front of you today as a parental grief life coach, and I help women in their early 30s to mid 50s who are navigating paternal grief go from survival mode to rediscovering their identity, reclaiming emotional safety, and rebuilding confidence so that they too can step fully in their God-given purpose that they were always destined for. So thank you for allowing me to share my story so that you get a better understanding of who I am and where I was and now where I am. And I'm so grateful for this opportunity. So as we just talked about, so the first step in that was the honesty. And it was the honesty about how you're feeling, about that pain, about your exhaustion, about your burnout, about the fact that you are grieving someone who really mattered deeply to you. So I want to ask you, have you truly allowed yourself to admit how deeply this loss affected you? And are you healing or are you hiding? What emotions have you been suppressing just to survive? And I know these questions are really deep and they're deep rooted, and I understand that. And you can go back and watch the recording, and I welcome you to write these down and really think hard and long about them, because I did the same myself. And sometimes I still go back and ask myself these type of questions. So you have to give yourself permission to feel. So I kind of incorporated that also in step one. Give yourself permission to heal. Healing begins the very moment that you stop judging your grief. Cry if you need to cry. Rest if you need to rest. Talk if you need to talk. Shout, scream if you need to shout and scream. because that suppressed grief, it eventually speaks through anxiety, through exhaustion, through anger, through isolation, or emotional numbness. Feeling your emotions does not make you weak. It makes you human. So in that, you have to stop isolating yourself. So after losing a parent, isolation can start feeling safe. You stop answering phone calls. You disconnect from people. You don't answer text messages. You emotionally shut down because explaining your pain feels exhausting. And that's exactly where I found myself. For 342 days, I sat in grief, believing nobody truly would understand what I was carrying. But you see, isolation becomes a prison if you stay there too long. Healing happens in safe places. So I want to ask you, have you isolated yourself emotionally from the people who genuinely care about you? Are you carrying grief silently because you feel being misunderstood? What would change if you allowed yourself to receive support you so desperately need? So step 2 is allow safe support into your life. You were never meant to grieve alone. And I really truly wish somebody told me that. Because as you know, there are no guides, no how-tos, no manuals to follow, and everybody's grief and time frame is different. I want to make that clear. But whether it's therapy, whether it's coaching from a parental grief like life coach such as myself, whether it's community, whether it's faith, whether it's trusted relationships, friendships, or support groups, healing requires some type of connection. And let me tell you something. Strong women, they need support too. Nobody told me that either. I thought it was Atlas. I thought I could carry the world. But boy, was I fooled. And sometimes your breakthroughs begin with 3 words. I need help. I need help. We have to learn how to release the guilt of moving forward. And this one is heavy. You see, many grieving daughters secretly struggle with guilt. Guilt from smiling again, guilt from experiencing joy again in those moments of yellows, guilt for rebuilding life after loss. And if healing somehow means forgetting the parent they loved, that's not true. We will never forget the parents that we love. They will always be in our hearts, in our minds, in our souls, in our spirits. But moving forward, you see, that's not betrayal. And I know people struggle with that. I struggled with that myself. Even when I would smile and I would catch myself and be like, oh my goodness, somebody's going to see me. They're not going to think that man behind me My dad and my dad and my dad. Most of those pictures of my dad and my mama and my grandmother, but I thought that if I had those moments, that people were going to think I didn't care about my dad. But again, that's people pleasing, and I am no longer that. You see, your parents' love does not disappear because your healing begins. So I want to ask you, have you connected suffering with loyalty? Do you secretly feel guilty in those moments when life feels good again? What if healing actually honored your parents instead of dishonoring them? Step 3. Separate healing from forgetting. You see, healing does not erase love. You can miss your parent deeply, but still choose life. You can carry memories without carrying emotional imprisonment. And you do not have to remain stuck to prove that your love is real. So, in rediscovering who you are now, parental grief changes your identity, especially if your parent was your safe place, your encourager, your protector, or your emotional foundation, as my dad was for me. You see, my dad, I can call him and talk to him about anything and everything, and he never judged me. Ever. Never. And my dad would do the same to me. He would tell me stories out that I really didn't want to hear, even like where I was conceived. I was like, that's okay, Dad. We can pass on that. But after loss, many women ask, who am I now? And the truth is, your answer is you are evolving. Not becoming who you were before the loss, but becoming someone stronger, wiser, deeper, and more intentional through the pain. So, who have you become through this grief journey? What part of yourself needs rediscovering? Are you allowing grief to define you or develop you? And then there's step 4. Rebuild your life one step at a time. And as I say, one step more than the day before is all it takes. You see, healing, it's not one giant leap. It's a small decision repeated daily. And in that, just getting out of bed, just taking care of yourself, just learning to pray again, Dream again. Laugh again. Tiny steps matter. And every step towards counts. Even when it feels small. Even when it's small. And celebrate. Just celebrate just a little bit those small wins. Your life still has purpose. And I need every grieving woman to really hear this and understand. Your life did not end when your parent passed on. There is still purpose that is attached to your name. There is still healing available to you. There is still joy that you haven't experienced yet. And there is still another version of you that is waiting on the other side of this pain. What if this next season of your life could still be meaningful? What dreams have you abandoned because of your grief? What would it look like if you choose life again? Step 5. Make the conscious decision to live again. When I tell you, this was the hardest for me. It truly was, because when you make that decision to live again and realize that your loved one went to be with the Lord, you did not. You're not just surviving. You're not just existing. You're living. And the moment I consciously decided to invest in myself and move forward, everything, and I do mean everything, shifted internally. It wasn't instantly, but it was intentionally. Healing starts with a decision. And maybe today, this episode, this is your sign that it's time to live again. So, in closing, if today's episode spoke to your heart, please share it with another woman that is navigating parental grief and loss. And remember this: your grief is valid. Your healing matters. And your story is far from over. If anything at all resonated with you, please DM me or comment me purpose, and I will send you my calendar link for a free heart-to-heart with Sonya. And together we can create your life blueprint, create a start to your healing journey. So also, with that being said, I have created the next Boss Warrior Queen Masterclass. And that is entitled After the Final Goodbye, Becoming Her Again. And that is on Wednesday, June the 3rd at 6:30 p.m. This is for the woman who has experienced parental loss, who smiles in public but cries in private, who feels emotionally exhausted from pretending to be strong, who has isolated herself because nobody understands her pain, who feels guilty for trying to move forward, who secretly wonders if she will ever feel like herself again. So again, if this sounds like you, DM me, text me, count me in, and I will make sure that you are included in the email. So when this registration link goes live, you will receive that link. So with that being said, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. Stay safe. Stay well. God bless you all. And bye for now.